beware of the Grim Reaper Clown Kruger because it's E5M7 Nightmare Underworld. Okay, I have to say it, this map just seriously annoys me. I've faced maps that are much more difficult, but this just feels cheap, like bringing in a cyber demon in a cramped space. The cave and the final area with the exit are just flat out cramped, seemingly to force you to have a hard time dodging anything. Teleporting all over on the expected path is a cool concept, but I don't get why the map has to be so tightly packed. Aesthetically, the map is about on par with Romero's other maps, but I honestly just didn't have fun playing through this one. It's not like you could even say it was some kind of performance-saving measure since this released in 2019. It's time for fate to never end in E5M8 Halls of Perdition. Yeah, not gonna lie, I was actually kind of disappointed by this. It didn't annoy me like the previous map did, but it did definitely underwhelm. It's a straight line through and through like most of the other maps, and the main threat is a cyber demon and spider mastermind. While there's other enemies in the area too, you can mostly run past them and it feels artificial to make it cramped at the end. When I made it to the exit, I actually no-clipped because it's a point of no return just to clean out the rest of the map. After that, I had to question if that was really all. I hate to sound like a broken record, but this honestly feels like another case of an aesthetically pleasing level with gameplay that's just kinda meh. It's definitely not the worst, but at the same time, you just expect better for the final level of this 24 years in the making extra episode. It's the Domain of Evil in E5M9 Realm of Iblis. It's another one of those levels that's merely okay, but not really anything special. Other than a cyber demon, probably the most distinguishing feature of the level is thin crushers. And yeah, the aesthetics are fine and use the hellish kind of themes you expect in Doom, but the gameplay leaves something to be desired in my opinion. Well, you technically have your choice of keys, but they're basically all adjacent to the start and you don't have to go that far to get them. It's certainly no fortress of mystery, it has structure and some good secrets all around, just not anything especially noteworthy either. I'm sorry if it seems like I often repeat myself, but I do give credit where credit is due. I'm just not someone who is the biggest fan of straight line maps, even if it does have some pretty good combat. Let's look through Hell's Garden in E5M1 Baphomet's Domain. As Romero's new episode to Doom in 2019, it's visually very impressive, but the gameplay is slightly less so. That's not to its detriment, and the idea of ice shooting switches is alluded to well enough with ammo near it. You probably know what my main nitpick is going to be, that the level's a little linear for me. Granted, it's just the first level and it has a few secret areas that deviate, so it's not fully a straight line. The map is very fittingly hellish, with red rocks, souls behind cages, a marble building, and fissures with pentagrams in a secret area. Challenge is pretty reasonable for the first level, with lost souls and cacodemons serving as the tougher opponents. Ultimately, it's pretty good to play, but the visuals are what really make this level. You certainly can't fault Romero for his taste in visual flair. Tell no one of this, because we're in E5M6 Unspeakable Persecution. It's like Romero took the most noteworthy parts of Doom 1's Toxin Refinery and Doom 64's Cat and Mouse. What I mean by that is there's a part where you stumble into the dark and then a later part where you're in a maze with a freaking cyber demon. I wasn't the biggest fan of the ledges room where you open things up around you, but the rest of the level is just fine. The secret exit is also here, and it isn't that hard to find if you pay attention and remember the mechanic from previous levels. The level has a bit of difficulty to it, but it also gives you a plasma rifle, so you can't really complain too much. It's not the best map ever, but it has some interesting tricks and visually looks just fine, really. It's time to stand way too close to E5M3 Cages of the Damned. It seems that despite all my rage, I am still just a slaying rat in a linear cage. I'll just have to settle up for the idea of straightforward levels that are at least visually impressive and give the impression of scale. I will give the level credit, starting out cramped and opening up is pretty nice. I'm a sucker for levels that unfold and warp as you play through them. I wasn't quite as fond of the imposed hazard floor to get to through to the exit, but at least there's a secret with a radiation suit. No cyber demon to stalk you this time, but there's cacodemons, barons, a lot of imps, and others to still make your time literal hell. All the cages with imps also mean you have to be quick on your toes. Overall, it's still a pretty good level with some nice set pieces, even if it also has the sin of a point of no return near the exit. It's time to weave through souls in E5M2 Sheol. At first, it seems like a similar snaking corridor level as the one before it, albeit with the level opening up a bit more. This quickly changes as the cyber demon is introduced just to make life difficult for you. Thankfully, you can telefrag him if you're lucky enough, but he definitely makes things tense at first trying to weave around him. Add to it a couple of barons and it's clear that the stakes have been raised for this one. My one real complaint really is that it's more on the linear side, much like the first level, but also has more secrets to discover. Thankfully though, it's also visually pleasing like that one, with flesh, faces of the damned, lava, marble, and bodies strewn throughout for that classic hellish aesthetic. As a whole, the level has a similar tightness and design as Baphomet's Domain, but the extra wrinkles do help it to stand out. It's time for Destructive Nothingness in E5M5 Abaddon's Void. And destructive is right, because there are cyber demons on opposite ends you have to navigate around without getting pumped full of rockets. Other than that, the level is fine, but it's nothing spectacular. After the previous level gave you choices of paths, this one's more or less tied to one main path again, but it's fine. I actually thought the exit was a point of no return at first, but bathe in the green flame's light and all will be revealed. There's also eventually unlockable teleporters to get rid of the cyber demons quickly, assuming you don't have the ammo to take them out the normal way. Aesthetically, I will say the level lives up to its name with a black sky and is decently varied and visually varied all around. All in all, it feels like a follow-up on Shul with similar themes, and I'd say it's all around a good successor. It's time to reject the straight and narrow in E5M4 Paths of Wretchedness. This is another map that, wait a second, are those branching paths? Is this a get 3 keys to unlock the exit map that you can get in any order you want? That is seriously awesome. I could nitpick and say the 3 paths are relatively narrow and straightforward, but I have to give credit here, I like choices. Now all 3 of them have their own challenges, one snaking along a catwalk, one running across sinking platforms in the lava, and one navigating crusher ceilings. The last bit of the level isn't quite as interesting, it's fine but just a few very tough enemies here and there, but I still give the map big props as a whole. It's visually pleasing, has some very rewarding secrets, and enough challenge to keep the heat up at least moderately. It's time to sum up this corner of hell known as John Romero's SIGIL. I'm going to be honest, and no disrespect to Sir Romero, but his maps are mostly more style than substance. Rarely is there any breathing room, and it feels like you're being led by the hand rather than encouraged to explore to any extent. Obviously, I'm not expecting Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but many of the better Doom maps like Doom 1's Computer Station give you plenty of areas to scope around in off the beaten path. The only one to give you significant choices is appropriately enough named Paths of Wretchedness, and even then it's not so much large optional areas as pick the 3 mandatory ones in any order. The ending map was especially a disappointment, more meat to it than Tower of Babel or Dis, but still leaving much to be desired. I'm not going to say I didn't have fun at Sigil, but I was kind of hoping for more from one of the great pillars of Doom. We can duke it out in DC next time, but first,